can't believe you guys ain't got my book yet, so you'd know all this stuff.
I haven't read many books.
I thought you'd do an interview. You'd read the book and you'd have questions.
No, we just have conversations. That's the whole point, is just to have the conversation.
HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Deer Grow.
Man, we've been using Deer Grow products for a long time. The Plot Start and Plot Boost, more recently Plot Till. Now we've got 3 new liquid fertilizers that have been put in the mix that will cover everything we could want for a food plot program.
It's huge, man. The more food plotting we do, it's like, man, the liquids just make sense. Like whether it's herbicides or the Plot Start and Plot Boost, and now the fertilizers getting mixed in. It's like, man, I can combine all of those in certain cases and do less passes for more results.
I mean, it's all about efficiency. I mean, like you said, less passes. If you're out there treating your beans with glyphosate in the summertime, you can mix in this fertilizer, do that all at once. You have the boost in there that helps the metabolism. It's all about efficiency when we're talking about food plots. And really the big difference on these liquid fertilizers is you're bypassing some of these soil limitations, pH limitations, the soil type. In a lot of cases, we talk about dry fertilizers only being available for 17% of what you put down in the first year. These liquid fertilizers straight into the plant are 90% available in the first year. Huge difference in what you're going to see in growth.
It's huge. And so right now you can use code HUNTR15 for 15% off any of the Deer Grow products on their website. And as always,
better food plots, bigger deer. And we're back.
Hey,
HUNTR Podcast, episode 241. 241. Still February. If you're listening to this, it's March.
Yeah. Yes.
It's March. Yeah. It's March. It's, I don't know what day in March, but 11th, maybe? Something like that?
That sounds right. I will be 32 by then.
Oh!
It's my birthday's next week.
How about that?
Monday, I think.
That's right. The 3rd.
Uh-huh.
The 3rd. Well, it's, March is kind of, it gets busy, from a scouting standpoint and from a work standpoint and from everything. And the weather starts to change a little bit.
Yeah. Well, contrast to January, February, where it's just kind of like, just we're packed inside. I mean, we're chilling and season's kind of over at that point. And to where now, it's like everybody feels just building and everybody's going to rip.
Yeah.
Including us.
Few breaks in the weather here on the forecast, Yeah,
I was looking for those teen temperatures you were talking about.
In the morning?
Yeah, I can find it. Well, yeah, I get overnight maybe. You get down to like 20, but we're pretty decent looking weather.
Couple
coming
60s.
Up here. 50s, 60s, yeah. Ice cream weather. So,
very nice.
Wherever you guys are listening to us from, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, we appreciate you guys being here. We drop these episodes every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern time. And if you've written us on Instagram, DM, or the website, those are the 2 that we check the most frequently. I think we're pretty good there. Pretty halfway decent.
We're getting there.
Jeremy's shaking his head. So appreciate you reaching out. If we haven't gotten back to you, we will do our best to do that at some point. We have some merch on the website. We got some Nalgene's hat shirts, that kind of
all the goodies,
cool stuff.
Keep Nick employed.
Appreciate you guys checking some of that out. And here we go.
I'm pretty excited about this one. This is one we've brought up the big woods and the main type of stuff, and it kind of, people tell us all the time, they're like, oh man, when you guys talk about like Pennsylvania or New York or whatever, it's like you're talking to the group that we never get talked about.
Well, they're definitely their own subset. I mean, I call us northeasternly, but we're not, compared to these. There's a whole other, all them northeastern states from Vermont and New Hampshire and Maine and all those New York. Even New York is in there too.
Adirondacks. It's a completely different style hunting. So we've got Hal Blood today from Big Woods Bucks, the main guy, and be interested to get into discussion. It's one of those things I've watched those guys for a long time. It kind of reminds me of how I grew up hunting, doing a lot of still hunting and just Big Woods of Pennsylvania and reading sign and tracks, and those guys do a lot of content, and so it's kind of cool just to see. It's a whole, like you said, it's a whole different style when you get into those situations, and really we've emphasized a lot the lack of woodsmanship, that's being used anymore, and these guys, they have to have it. Like it is, you have it and you succeed, or you don't and you fail, type of thing. And so excited to get Hal on and kind of talk to him about the true big woods.
Let's do it.
All right, Hal, appreciate you coming on this, I guess, late this afternoon at this point. we're usually knocking them out early. And I guess last time we were talking, you ended up running down some coyotes, huh?
Yes, I muffed the last time there with you. I sorry about that.
No,
I was like, what's this guy's deal? He doesn't like us or what?
I was like, he's killing coyotes. So we're all in favor of that. So in the good graces.
Well, the truth be known is it was my first time I got to go because I had surgery on my thumb and I've been laid up. I always do my stuff like that in the winter, so I couldn't ride my snowmobile. We coyote hunt from our snowmobiles, but so I got the green light from the therapist. I could run my snowmobiles. So I guess that was like the day before. I went to the PT on therapist on Wednesday, and the guys called me up. We're going tomorrow. I go, all right,
it's been bound up enough. What's the weather been? I mean, have you guys gotten a decent amount of snow this winter up there?
Still a little bit less than average. We had snow in November.
Yep.
And then the last few years, it's kind of strange. We get snow in November and deer season, and then we'll get a little warm up in December and it knocks it back down. And like Thanksgiving week up in the high country, I was pushing snow up over my knees.
Wow.
And we had 2 weeks in a row that for a couple days it got up. I think it rained a little bit and it got up the 40s, and it knocked it down pretty much to, not bare ground, but way down. And it froze up. And then we didn't get a lot of snow until about a week ago. Last weekend. Well, we had Thursday, we got a foot, and then Sunday, like a couple days later, Sunday, we got another foot. And it was warm a couple days ago. Not warm. It's the first time. Tuesday it warmed up, got above freezing for the first time in probably 6 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been below, not bitterly cold for here, but below zero some. I think 20 below. It hit 20 below one day, but a lot of mornings, 4, 5, 8 below, stuff like that.
That's wild, man. We talk about obviously just different parts of the country and the things that these deer are going through from an element side, and then you hear just kind of what you just said, and you kind of have to shake your head and just think how they make it through and how they keep persevering and that kind of conditions winter after winter.
Yeah, they're tough, and the deer we have if you split Maine like in half, north and south, the northern half of Maine is what they call a boreal forest, which means a spruce fir forest. There's no oak. There's some white pine, but there's no oak. Not really. There's no hemlock. You get out of that type of woods, and it's boreal means spruce fir, the green growth and stuff, and cedar. And these deer in that forest, and it goes north into New Brunswick and Quebec and Nova Scotia and all that. But it's the largest subspecies of white-tailed deer. We talk about all the big deer out in Saskatchewan and all that. Well, they get big because it's north too, but it's usually they're weighing them out there on the live weight anyways. You hear about 300 pounds is live weight,
Right. Yep.
So, but I read that in a book. Leonard Lee Rue, he was a kind of a naturalist. I don't know if you heard him. He had a book he wrote. I was just a teenager when I got the book. It was with game animals in North America, and he had all the different game. But I learned in that book that there was 23 subspecies of white-tailed deer in North America, and the largest is the borealis whitetail.
Wow.
They call them the northern borealis whitetail. So southern Maine has the same deer you have, the Virginia whitetail, right?
Yep.
It's a species, and they come all the way up. So like you can shoot a 200-pound dress buck anywhere in Maine, but they're few and far between until you get to the north.
Yeah.
So that's why it's a different hunt. They're really a different animal to hunt up here. It's like difference between hunting a mule deer or an elk or something. It's not the same as hunting deer down your way. Now, that being said, you can use a lot of the same tactics and stuff, but the deer don't roam as far where the deer population is higher.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to go very far or cover as much ground, and that's what we're up against up north here is the deer densities aren't as high, so especially the mature bucks, the older they get, the more they spread out and travel further and further,
Yeah.
So.
Well, when you start talking about those deer, like, because I think when people think about the Maine side of things, especially, they think the tracker aspect of stuff, and so I guess just for some of our listeners, Hal, like I watched something the other day. You guys were talking about kind of the big woods bucks and how you guys started to get together. Give us a kind of a high level view of just how the big woods bucks part just got started with you guys.
It got started about 20 years ago when I wrote my first book.
Mm-hmm.
I had built a sporting camp with my wife, and we were year round, but deer hunting was it was my favorite thing, and it was the big thing, and the deer hunters would sit there, and I'd be guiding hunters, and we'd have the lodge full of other hunters on their own and stuff we were feeding, and they'd ask me what I did that day, or maybe my client that week was telling about what we did, and I'd just be telling some stories, and they'd be saying, you got to write a book about this stuff, because they were learning by listening to me that they were hearing stuff they'd never heard before, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I said, yeah, maybe I will. So I sat down that one winter and I wrote a book, and it used to be everybody referred to it as the North Woods, because there's an association in Maine. It's a landowner association, because Maine doesn't have really hardly any state land or public land. It's big landowners, timber companies, lumber companies. It used to be a lot of paper companies. In the North Maine Woods is actually an association of that landowners that they have an open use policy. You do pay to go in that North Maine Woods. There's a daily use and a overnight camping use and stuff. And anyways, it always was everybody called it going up north of the North Maine Woods. And I just wanted to call it something different. So I called it the Big Woods, and I don't really remember when that came into my mind, but I was trying to differentiate it from just being up north, because part of northern Maine over in the east is actually, there's a lot of farm country there because it's flatter.
Oh.
I'm in the western side of Maine, the northwest side, and it's mountains. So I kind of defined the big woods because I knew the deer were different, because I didn't grow up here. I grew up in southern central Maine and hunting there until I made my first trip here when I was 23, when I got out of the Marine Corps. It was in 1980. And my first trip, I knew it was something different about these deer up here. It was not like hunting anywhere else. So the definition I have of big woods deer are the deer that don't have access to agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
Because agriculture is what controls their feed and their movement patterns. That's why everybody talks about bedding and feeding areas and getting in between them. Well, that doesn't work here. These deer up here wander. The feed's the same in the woods pretty much everywhere, and they wander around and feed. That's why they travel so far. Even the does and stuff, they might move a mile from year to year. I mean, they'll have a couple miles they roam around in too, but they kind of keep when they have their babies, they try to keep in the best feed for them, get them ready for winter. And then the bucks, as they get older, they just start expanding their range and figuring out where there's more does, and that's what it's about. So there's no, you're not going to pattern them per se, and you're not going to, you can put trail cameras up. I do for fun of it, but they don't have any schedule. You might see a certain buck. I've never had a buck on a trail camera that I shot.
Really?
Yeah. People name their deer ahead of time and all of this stuff. And I don't name mine till after I shoot them. And then the name is about something about the hunt or the area or whatever.
Yeah.
That's how I name mine. But you're not going to see deer and say, that's the one I'm after, They just travel too far. Some guys think they shot a buck that was living up on this ridge. Yeah, that's where he hung out. Well, he hung out there maybe once in a while, but he probably was there 10 miles from there at other times,
Wow.
Is most of the hunt you're doing, Hal, is it in the big woods, like that North Maine big woods that you're talking about?
Yeah, I don't hunt anywhere else.
That's the only place you hunt. How
I've been invited many a times to go. I've been hunted. I had clients for bear and whatever over the years, and they got farms in Iowa and Illinois and Kansas. Had never had any interest.
Yeah.
We did go. I've hunted in the UP, which is big woods, a lot of big woods there, in northern Minnesota. And then me and some of my guides used to go to Ontario, northwest Ontario, which is big woods. Now, that being said, it was a different deer. It wasn't the northern borealis, but they were big deer. I shot one there that dressed 280 one year.
Wow.
And,
wow.
I always I don't like being around. I like to be able to roam wherever I want to go. I don't want any constrictions on that,
Yeah, no, I get it. How big is that? How big is that wilderness or whatever you're going to call
it? Northern Maine, you mean?
Well, it's a defined, like, you're saying that they're owned by a couple paper companies and stuff. Do you have any idea the acreage or how big that area is?
Yeah, that's let's see. So we're on the edge of it here. I'm not in the area. I'm just below the area that's where you pay to go in.
Yep.
And that actually, the boundaries of that changes because some landowners don't want to be in it when it changes hand.
Yep.
So it's changed a little bit, but it's still big woods out of it. That's just what they call the North Maine Woods Association.
Sure.
Yeah.
So and then down this whole western side of Maine, south of me for a long ways is still, it's all big woods, there's a few towns here and there, but the piece that's above me, so if you started where I am and went north to the northern tip of Maine, it's probably over 150 miles.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And then east to west, it's 100 miles.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So it's pretty big.
What would you get? Is it hundreds of thousands? Is that a million?
No, it'd be hundreds of thousands.
Couple 100,000, similar to like a
of acres or
Yeah.
square miles?
acres.
Acres.
Oh, it's millions of acres.
Is it?
Oh yeah, yeah. Because square miles is
640.
yeah 640 or something. Yeah, acres in a square mile.
Mm-hmm.
So if you took if you just took and you said 100 by 150, is what's that?
No, I'm a mathematician on that.
$1,000,000. 5, is that right?
Yep.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll go with
Sounds
that.
right.
That's big.
Yep.
It's big.
No, that'd be it wouldn't be 1,000,000 acres. That
Be 1.5
million square miles. That would be 100. I think that'd be 150,000 square miles.
Yep, that sounds right.
So if you multiply that by 640, you're in the millions.
You're
Way in the millions.
way in the millions. Yeah.
Yeah.
96 million.
Yeah, it's there's millions of acres.
Wow.
And most of it never gets hunted. And a lot of it, there's really not many deer either.
Yeah.
Because back in the when we had the budworm and they did a lot of, they cut over the North Maine woods and cut all the traditional deer yards. It was a terrible thing they allowed them to do, but it decimated the deer herd when they cut, because if they don't have cover for the winter, they're dead.
Yeah, they're done.
They're done. And that's what happened to them. They used to be, when I grew up, all the deer were in northern Maine because they had the wintering areas. And I grew up in southern Maine, and there was very few deer. Very few. I mean, it was a big deal to shoot a deer, and it was either sex. And northern Maine, they said it was traditionally in the North Maine woods, say, was 15 to 20 deer per square mile.
Wow.
And now there'd be different areas are different. There's some square miles with none. Like where I am, the herd, we've took care of the coyotes pretty good. Some wintering areas have grown back. People are feeding them near town. They migrate towards town here in the winter. So our population has grown. And I'm sure we have, on average, here 10 deer per square mile. But further north is not. It might be 4, deer per square mile or something.
So in some of those traditional areas where they were like the timber and paper companies, when they would do a cut, would that regenerate a lot of feed and browse for those deer in that area?
Yeah, but it doesn't do them any good in the winter. It took
Right.
away the house.
Took away the
house.
Yeah.
What it actually did back then in the 70s and 80s, what it did was created all that moose habitat, and our moose exploded.
Oh.
Because the moose can survive in more snow. They're a big animal.
Yeah.
So it favored the moose. The deer wintering areas were logged off. Those deer pretty much died. And the ones in the peripheral that weren't like staying in the North Maine woods, enough of them survived. And it's the last few years we've had some easy winters, so it is coming back in some of the areas up there. And I'm not saying it's all bad up there, because there is places that are pretty good, where those deer, like a lot of our deer along the borders on this side of Maine, the west and the north, they winter in Canada. And Canada has, when you go into Canada, it's kind of ironically from here, like west of Maine into Quebec, you only go about 4 or 5 miles and you're in the farm country.
Wow.
So those deer can go out and be around the farm country in the winter, and they get less snow over there. So that helps our deer, because then they come back over here for the rest of the year,
It's amazing how much those deer are actually moving, and literally, most of the country, in the whitetail range doesn't think of deer essentially migrating, whitetails at least, right? They think of that in the mule deer side and coming out of the high country. But, from a whitetail side, that literally pickup and migration is a foreign concept.
Yeah. And the biologists have been radio collaring some does in the deer yards to see where they're coming from. And there was one that I got the map of it. It was wintering in a deer yard, like from this area. I don't know as the crow flies, but that deer anyways was wintering there and coming up here to south of town. It would leave in April, and you could see by the graph, then it migrated 20 miles, 30 miles, and then it had its baby because it stayed for a month.
Wow.
And then it kept moving up north here, and it had to swim a big river, and then it spent the summer up here and headed back in November. And it was from where it was 75 miles from where it wintered to where it came in the summer.
Wow. That's so crazy. And we think that deer disappear because they jump a farm or two,
Yeah.
Huh. What I mean, what like if we look at that fall time frame, especially like leading into hunting, what's the primary food source that you guys focus on that the deer are using and looking for, I guess?
We don't focus on a food source.
Not at all.
No, they. I mean, I can tell you what they eat,
Mm-hmm.
but throughout the woods, it's pretty much. I'm not going to say it's everywhere, but there's a lot of feed when they log, whether they clear cut or even select cut. A lot of green plants grow up where the skidders dig up the dirt,
Yep.
make the ruts, and you get raspberries coming up. You get all kinds of these different green plants. That's why like a food plot won't even work here. I had a buddy that moved up from Massachusetts, and he planted 2 food plots. He had it all dug up. He had it logged and dug up, and he did all the stuff to make these food plots. I don't know what he spent on it, but a lot of money. And he never had one deer ever step foot in them. He planted broccoli and brassicas, and the moose would come eat the broccoli and brassicas, but he never once had a deer. And there's too much to eat in the woods. They're not going to come out in one of them openings there and just to feed. They just don't. That's not how they operate. Even the does, say they're around a cutting, a fairly new cutting, and there's a lot of new growth. And then the saplings that grow up is new growth. Things from like maple shoots and pin cherry and beech and birch and stuff. All those new shoots, they'll eat those when they start coming up, and they'll have little leaves on them, which are really high nutrition.
Yeah.
They'll eat that in the summer, and the green plants and raspberry leaves, but it's everywhere. They don't have to go to one spot to get it. So even the does, all they do is they wander down and they feed. And when they're done feeding, they just lay down wherever they are. And then they get back up and they keep wandering. They don't go back anywhere, back and forth. And they wander around and then maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 days or whatever, they wander back the way they were, and they keep in an area, but there's no one place you'll ever find even does bedding. There's no such thing as a bedding area here.
Wow.
And there's really no such thing as a feeding area. There's feed, and you can go scout that out, and you can find where there's some deer using this and wait it out if you wanted to. And I'm sure something's going to come by eventually, but it isn't going to be on a daily basis.
Yeah. So how are you tracking exclusively? Like, is it the sole method then? Are you waiting for snowfall and tracking bucks? Is that how you're hunting?
Well, no, I don't wait for it, but as I've got older and I've got a lot of water over my dam, and I've shot enough bucks. I tell people I don't need to shoot another one. It's just, to me, it's more about enjoying the hunt and trying to shoot a particularly big buck, an older buck or whatever. And I like to track. So I do kind of bide my time the best I can for snow. And that being said, we've had some years we never get snow. So you got to kind of juggle that around too. But most of my deer I've shot tracking. But I guided for 30 years, and I've had lots of people shoot deer still hunting with me, put them on stands or whatever. I mean, you can hunt up here anyway. It's just I never had any patience myself personally to sit. I could never sit. I can't sit. I sit a half an hour and eat my sandwich when I jump a buck, but that's about it. I just roam around on bare ground. I call it scouting, still hunting / scouting.
Yeah.
And if I seen a great big one, I'd probably think about shooting them. But the last few years I've spent with my grandson. He's 15 now, and he wants to be a guide, so I've been trying to teach him. And then next year, when he's 16, he can go on his own. So I spent most of my season, I didn't even carry a gun most of the time. I just didn't carry a gun. I just filmed him, and we roamed around, and he passed up a couple spike horns, and I think he saw 8 or 9 bucks, and I saw without, I hunted sometimes without him. I hunted the second week. Billy Moles come out from, I don't know if you heard about Billy, but he come out from Wisconsin and hunted with me for a week, and we saw a couple of bucks there, and but I think I saw 12 or 13 bucks this year, and one I should have shot when I was with him was actually tracking, and he shot. There was 2 bucks, and I didn't know it. I was trying to figure out the tracks, and I see him put his gun up, and he shot it. He shot at this buck, and it was way off, and he had his grandfather's Model 99 Savage with 303 Savage, and he was aiming way up in the cut, and I go, seems like a long way, and he fired, and I see the deer jump, and I'm like, man, that'd be a good shot if you ever hit that out there with that gun. And he didn't, but I looked at him, and I looked back, and I saw movement, and right out in front of us, about 100 yards, and the cut was the buck and the doe we'd been tracking, and they jumped up on a little hillside there and stopped and looked back, and I was in guide mode and didn't think about picking up my gun and shooting it. It's a nice, great big one. And that'd have been fun, because if he never did hit the one he was shooting at, but we could have shot 2 bucks together. I've never done that before. But then I saw 2 great big ones with my grandson, and he just doesn't quite have the experience to know how to try to shoot one running in the brush or whatever. But I could have shot both of those bucks. Those were really nice ones, big ones.
The Hunter Podcast is brought to you by Hoyt.
What can we say, man? Another year back with Hoyt. We're both shooting RX8s. I'm shooting 70 pounds in the bourbon, which I love bourbon.
That's great.
And you're shooting 80 pounds in the straight black.
Blacked out as always, man. I got so I'm shooting the 500 grain Easton Arrow this year. And at 80 pounds, I'm flinging that thing at like 300 feet per second. I mean, it's deadly. Put a water buffalo in front of me and he's done.
I mean, we shot it earlier. You literally put an arrow through a brand new target, like never been shot before.
I know. So one other thing that Hoyt is doing this year is they're making all their own strings in-house. And so the quality is top notch, and it just really is something that is setting them apart from their competitors.
Well, what we always try to do when we go to our bow shop, Ultimate Outdoors, is we try to shoot other bows just to make sure that we are really giving everybody a fair chance. Sure. The reality is it's a no-brainer. Hoyt stands above all of them every single time.
Definitely. And so right now you can use code HUNTR, HUNTR, for 20% off any apparel on the Hoyt website. And as always,
get serious, get Hoyt. So I guess, Hal, when you're, obviously a lot of experience looking at the track side of things, when you come across a set of tracks and, identified as a buck track, are you making a decision there of like, basically size of that buck and whether you're going to pursue it or not? Or is it like, I'm on a buck track and I'm going to start following it?
No, I don't get, the only time I get on, I've got like different categories of them.
Okay.
But I won't take any track unless I think it's one of them. It's around a 200 pounder.
Okay.
And because that one might lead me to a bigger one. See, I call them either or bucks. If I follow those tracks, what I'm looking for is to see if I can get a look or a sign that he's got a big rack. Because quite frankly, the ones with the best racks out this way tend to be the ones that weigh 190 to 210. And you get the big old ones, and the racks on average aren't as big. I don't know, it's just a genetic thing or whatever it is, but so I might take one that I figure is I call it either or. It's 190 or it's 210 or whatever, and see what it might look like. And I've let a lot of them go when I catch up to them. I let at least one go this year like that. I caught up to it in about an hour, and it didn't have much for a rack, and I just turned around and went back. So, but I'm fussier than most people. I tell people don't go by what I'm looking for a track, because the ones I'm looking for are the ones that are few and far between in the woods, those old big, I call them toe draggers or square-toed ones. The ones that are, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old or whatever.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to ask. When you look at that track, are you looking for anything in particular? Like, I know a lot of guys will look for the width of, using their hand, or the length of it, or just, spread of the actual toes, and do claw impressions. I mean, is it just a skill that you've developed, or is there a science behind it, what you're looking for to identify it?
Yeah, well, yeah, I can explain it to people. It's just a lot to it. And then again, these deer we're hunting here, these northern borealis, they have the biggest feet. I hunted big deer in Ontario, and the feet were nowhere near as big, So you got to go by what's a big track in your area. And the ones up here that I call are either or around 200-pound buck. I call them 3x3, 3 inches by 3 inches, but they're never square like that.
Right.
There might be 2 3/4 by 3 or 3 1/4, or they might be 3 by 3.5, something like that. And then you'll get into the real big ones that are 3x4. The biggest ones you'll see. I took a picture of one this year that I was tracking. It's probably almost 4x4.5.
Wow.
And those are the ones, like I said, it's hard to find one of those. I go days sometimes, and I never take a track because I'm just trying to cover ground and find one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll pass up. I can walk by 10 buck tracks in a day some days, trying to find the right one.
Wow.
And the ones I go walk by is most people would die to be on those tracks, following them,
Yeah.
It's just that like I told you, I'm long in the tooth here, I'm older, and I don't need to. It's not hard to shoot one of them for me, I mean? It's not a big deal,
And most of this tracking, like, is it during the rut? So these bucks are the better ones are on does, or is it after the rut?
It's whenever we get snow.
Yeah. When's your season start?
3 weeks before Thanksgiving week.
Okay.
So our season doesn't run on a date; it runs by the calendar.
Okay.
And Thanksgiving week is always our last week,
mm-hmm.
and we have 3 weeks before that. So it's basically November.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And we can have snow the first week. I mean, the last 5 out of 6 years, we've had tracking snow of some sort the first week. In a couple of years, we've had tracking snow the whole week.
Wow.
And then it can melt off too. You never know when you get it early. I remember one year we had snow a week before the season. We had to wait a week before we could go hunt, and there was snow on the ground. So we don't know here, and I've seen other years. I remember a couple of years over the last 35 or so we had went the whole season with no snow.
Wow.
So when there's snow, I'll be tracking. And people ask me what's my favorite week. Well, if there's snow, the first week's actually my favorite week because they're not traveling very far yet.
Mm-hmm.
Once the rut getting towards the rut, which our rut is the 15th to 30th every year, mark it on your calendar. And so when you're moving up towards that 10th on, the bucks are starting to roam looking for an early doe, and you want to pack a couple sandwiches because there ain't any does really in yet, but they're going to keep going till because they think there is one, and you might get on a nice buck track and never catch up to them all day. He never stops. You can't walk as fast as a buck can walk.
Yeah.
So if he don't stop to do something like lay down, chase a doe around, make a scrape, he's got to stop and do something before you're ever even gaining any time on it.
Yeah. When you're looking for the track initially, do you have like certain spots? You're like, I'm going to go check these spots for tracks, or is there a method to covering the ground that you're like, following trails, or how do you do that?
Quite frankly, a lot of it's luck because you can find a track somewhere that, you never expected to see a track there or something. But, yeah, I mean, I know I have areas I know where there's plenty of bucks around, and I'll go check them areas, and I'll go check the signpost rubs. I'll blow through there, and anytime I'm trying to cut a track in the morning, I just strike off. I don't ride the roads looking for them. I get in the woods. I tell people, for every buck that crossed the road, there's 10 more that didn't.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be in the woods looking. So I make big circles for the day. I just say, this is where I'm going today. And I head in the woods and I make some kind of a big circle till I find a track.
How many miles do you think you put on during a November season?
I probably average 10 miles a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
And just gun, right? You're not archery hunting, just tracking with the gun, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't bow hunt.
Do people bow hunt in that territory, like in that area?
Well, a few, not very many.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like, based on what you're saying, like extremely hard, right? Because I mean, you can't pattern these things. So,
well, I've had some guys back when I had my other outfitting business. I would take some bow hunters. I'd have bow hunters come up and they do reasonably well, but
Okay.
they were sitting,
Yeah.
I'd put them on a trail I knew they were using a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say they were back and forth, but it's like a travel. I call them travel corridors more than anything. They don't step right in the same run necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
And then where the signpost rubs are, them areas, because once you get into fall, they're checking those. That's where they leave their scent. They're checking by. So for bow hunting, that's a good strategy, sitting in them areas.
Yeah, I was going to ask when you were tracking if you were paying attention to rubs and scrapes at all.
Well, I just file everything back in my mind. I'm not really, unless I find a particularly nice signpost rub, then I'll mark it on my Onyx there, and then if it's in an area that I'm not familiar with, because a buck will take you to these places you've never been a lot of times, So I'll mark a signpost rub, and then I'll go back maybe the next spring or something and just scout that whole area. Because usually when you blow through an area on a buck, you just blew through the area. You didn't really know anything about it, Yeah.
Are you running into guys very often out there? I mean, I know it's a giant piece, but are you run into other hunters out there?
No, I don't. There's places that get hunted more than others around closer to town, and there's places. It's usually the places that there's more deer, that there's more hunters.
Yeah.
And even then, there's not a lot of hunters. I mean, you might see a hunter in the woods in one of them places, but I don't hunt those places. I have some far back in places where I try to go. I don't want to. If I see a boot track in the woods that's 2 days old, I go, somebody's been here.
Sure.
I don't. Well, once in a great while, I'll see somebody in the woods, but not very often. I mean, I've gone the whole season before and never see somebody in the woods,
Yeah.
But a lot of that's because of where I hunt. I purposely don't put myself in places where there might be people,
Yeah.
That's wild.
I'm piecing it all together here. A lot of this is very, very, very foreign to us, right? As far as like where you're finding these bucks, and I heard you tell Jeremy you're kind of paying attention to sign, but it's kind of whatever. Are you finding areas that and I know you said there's no like known bedding areas, but are you finding areas that you feel like, hey, there's a pile of buck sign here. There's obviously recent beds he's been bedding in here recently that you think are consistent from year to year? I mean, is anything like that?
The only thing, no, it's not usually consistent. You'll find more of that in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't travel as much in the summer. They're putting the feed bag on and they're in the new, into the new feed coming up, and they might hang around a spot for a few days or something, but none of that really matters because he's not going to be there in the fall.
Right.
When the leaves drop, which is pretty early here, our leaves start falling in early October.
Wow.
And by mid-October, there's really no leaves left on the trees.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're in an area in the summer where it's, the leaves are everywhere, and even in a clear cut that's 4 or 5 feet tall of saplings, that's good cover in the summer. But as soon as them leaves fall off, them bucks are out of there. They ain't staying in that open anymore. And then they get into their fall territory, and then you won't find these places where they're hanging out, because the older bucks especially, and that's what I talk about. The young bucks, that always, they might hang around the same place, but to me that's irrelevant. The big ones travel their territory, and the older they get, they might take more days to get around. But I think on an average, a buck typically gets through his territory in 3 or 4 days. So he circles, it might be, pick a number. He's got 10, 20 square miles he's roaming.
Wow.
And he might roam through that territory and looking for his does or whatever. And once a rut starts, he might not get back around for 2 weeks because he's just going from doe to doe,
Yeah.
But they still have a big area. But there's a way, the way I teach people, I do these, I call them my deer clinics. I do them in May when the snow gets out. And I do a deer school. It's a 3-day weekend. We have fun. We go in my remote camp, and the wood still looks like in the fall. There's no leaves. It's all like gray looking, like in the woods, like fall. And you can still see the sign. You see the rubs and scrapes and stuff. And I do that school. But what I teach people is I call it the 90-10 rule. But there's when they travel through that territory, so you pick a number. You say this buck has 10 square miles, make it easy. That would be small, but say it's 10 square miles. So he only uses about 10% of that, which is 1 mile, 1 square mile, right? But that 1 square mile is broken up into corridors and stuff that might be 100 yards wide, 50 yards wide, whatever. And that's how he travels through his territory. So if you narrow that, if you find those corridors, it'll be where the signpost rubs are going to be. That's where you hunt. So instead of thinking about how am I going to hunt this 10 square miles, you don't have to think about that. You have to think about keeping yourself in those corridors. So the way I talk about that is you spend 90% of your day in the 10% area, and 10% of your time getting through the 90% to get into another 10%. I just hurry right through those areas, and those areas will be things like open hardwood ridges. They ain't there. They might, I don't say they won't travel through there, but there's usually not a place that they always going to come through. You know what I mean? It's not like that. If they're crossing a hardwood ridge, it's because they want to get to the other side, and it isn't going to be the same place every time they go through. But those corridors are the same place. When they come through that particular area, they're going to hit that corridor where their signposts and stuff are. So that's where you want to hunt. So it doesn't matter if you're going to be a sitter or a still hunter, or if I'm tracking, that's the places I go look for tracks. So you got to hunt the 10%.
That makes sense.
You find that those are correlated with terrain features?
Those areas?
Yeah.
Terrain, and it's actually more the type of woods. So like I said, we got a boreal forest, spruce and fir. So typically here we have green growth, the spruce fir on the top of the mountains. The middle will be hardwoods, and in the bottom will be your streams, your swamps. The low ground is typically predominantly green. I mean, there'll be hardwoods here and there too. So you've got transition zones, when you transition between the green and the hardwoods, that's the line they take, whether it's high or low. They want to be in that cover.
Mm-hmm.
And in the bottoms, even at the top, because there's brown ashes up high in the mountains too, in places. But when you're in those transitions down low, when you come down off the ridges of mountains and you hit the bottoms with the low ground and it gets swampier and stuff, that's where you'll start where the brown ash grows, which is key here. So you just put that all together and figure out where you're going to hunt.
Yeah. What about scrapes? You paying any attention to those? Anything of note that you're like, hey, you've heard of community scrapes and stuff like that, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, I call those annual scrapes. Community ones might be, I know they call them that, like around the farm country, there's more than one buck. And what I found with scrapes here is they're not as important to the deer because every mature buck knows where every doe is in his territory. He's not going to a scrape and waiting for her to show up. He knows where she is, and he's going to go check on her. And that's what he does. He goes throughout his territory and checks, and he'll arrive there when she's ready.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got no reason to be hanging around a scrape. He'll make scrapes, and I actually broke it down in my books. You'll see I've broken rubs and scrapes both into 3 different categories. And so the first scrape, what people call scrapes, and they're not even really scrapes. I call them pawings. They're pawing the ground. They might walk along and kick the ground up. There's no limb. There's no, your licking branch, a limb, whatever you want to call it. That's a pawing, I call it. And then you have a regular scrape. And those here will be made usually where the does are that year. Remember I said they might move a mile according to the food. Like there might be a new logging area a mile from where they were the year before. But usually you'll find those scrapes, what are real scrapes with a branch and stuff, where the does are. So they might travel a mile and never make a scrape, but when they get near where there's does, they'll make one.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other scrape is, I call it an annual one because it's made every year in the same place.
Mm-hmm.
Even if there's no does around, it'll be there. There's some I know where there's some that's been there for 20 or 30 years, right in the same place.
Wow.
Yeah.
The young bucks learn about them and they go, and it's just, there's never going to be a doe there, in some of them, because there just isn't any does around, but they still make those scrapes there. And that's a good sign. That just means that's a place they're traveling through in their routine.
Yep.
Yeah. And then the rubs, I categorize kind of this. They have the same meaning. So the first kind of rub is I call it a hooking, where they're just thrashing in the brush a little bit, mostly frustration. It's the same as a pawing, frustration. And then you have your common rub, which they're made on a tree somewhere, anywhere, and it's made 1 year, and that's the end of it. It will tell you some things. It'll tell you there's been a buck through there. Doesn't mean another buck's going to come through, or that same buck will come through that area again. Doesn't mean that. And then the signpost rubs are the important ones. Those are the ones that are scent. They're scent posts. So I call them signposts. I coined that term too, because I knew that rub was something different. And that's where they communicate. Different bucks communicate. Buck lays his scent there, and it's rubbed year after year after year. I've got one here, right here in my man cave. The beavers cut it down, so I went in and got it, and I got it as like a post in here. It's got 80 growth rings in it. It's a brown ash tree. They don't grow very fast.
Wow.
And it's rubbed to the center. They usually start the signpost when the tree's small, but Buck's been rubbing that for at least 60 years.
Wow.
That's
So you think
amazing.
about how many Bucks know about that.
Yeah.
I put a camera, I don't do much with cameras. I might put 2 or 3 out in the fall, and I just put them out before the season. I pick them up after. I don't ever go look at them, and during the season, I don't do that. But I found a new signpost place a few years back, and I'd hunted that area, and I just never went through this certain place there, and I stumbled onto this. I call it the triple signpost because there's 3 big. One's real big, like this big, and there's another one like this, and another one maybe a little smaller. But there's 3 together, and they were all shined up when I went there the first week. So I went back the end of the week, had a client with me, and I put a trail camera there, and I picked it up early January. We had the snow kind of melted down, and I said, I'm going to go in and get that. Had 9 different bucks on that. So it tells you how many communicate. I got really nice video and pictures of them interacting on those
Wow.
signposts.
Do you think there's a way how to distinguish a signpost rub, like in the first year, if it's, without seeing it from year to year?
You have to, it's not a signpost until I say 5 years.
Wow.
Once a buck is, because that could be when it starts, the only, a young buck might say, I'm going to rub this. And the next year he goes and rubs it. So the time it's got 5 years on it, you got a 5-year-old buck there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's when it starts, because if it doesn't go 5 years, to me, it really doesn't mean that much, because it might go, it might go 5 and never be rubbed again. It might go 2 or 3 and never be rubbed again. But usually once they get to 5 years, another young buck might have found it. He might rub it too. There might be more than one buck rubbing it. And then, and again, it might be an inch in diameter when they start on it. And they kill a lot of them, because eventually a lot of them just end up, they've rubbed it 4, 5, 6, 7 years, and they've rubbed the bark all the way around, and they've girdled it, and they've killed it, So you have to look at it to identify it. You will see the growth rings of the tree healing over.
Yeah.
So if they rub on one side, they rub it, the next summer, that tree's going to grow, the bark's going to try to grow around the scar, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he'll rub that. And then it's going to grow another layer. And you'll be able to count how many years in that tree.
Wow.
And when they get real old, you can't count the years. You only have to, because sometimes I found some that, even though they're big and they've been rubbed for 20 years, there might be a year that they don't get rubbed. I don't know why that is, or 2 years, and then they're rubbed again. But if you find one that's a big tree, and you look at one side and you look at it, it's flattened right out, and you can see that if you look at it sideways, it's to the center of the tree. Well, obviously that's been rubbed since it was little.
Interesting.
And it survived. Now down your way, you don't have brown ash.
No.
Mm-mm.
So you want to know where you're going to look for your signposts down there?
Where?
White oak and red cedar. You have those down there, right?
Red cedar, we see it often.
And you're going to find, I found them turkey hunting in Tennessee. I found several signposts there on red cedar.
Yep.
And it starts about Massachusetts. And it goes south. So you go look around for some red cedar there, and you see if you see them years of growth on those. That's your signpost there. But for some reason, white oak is another favorite, because white oak, I know down in southern Maine, it's not very common like red oak. I don't know about down your way, but so small white oaks, and even when they get bigger, my partner Chris he lives in Rhode Island, and he's found some good, 6-8 inch white oaks that are signposts down there.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
And hemlock is the other one.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've seen hemlock as well.
I think like where we're at, it seems like they rub on, like opportunistically, they'll rub on trees they can find that are softer. You know what I mean? So like
cedars and hemlocks,
that's what I mean.
Are the big ones.
Like we don't have a lot of cedar. We have a lot of white oaks and red oaks and
Right.
and cherries and stuff. So if you find a a pine tree of any sort, I mean, it's going to get rubbed, or a soft maple and stuff. They tear into them.
Yeah, but that's your common rub. See, the key is
I
what
agree.
you just said. You don't have many red cedar.
No, we don't.
That's why they select them. They select a tree that's uncommon. Like up here, the brown ash tree. It's really, if you looked up in a tree book, it's black ash. The locals always called it brown ash, and it's what the Indians made pack baskets out of and stuff, and people still do. So that's an uncommon. It's not uncommon, but it's probably one of the trees that you'll find the fewer of because it only grows in wet ground. So that's limited to where it can grow.
Right.
So once in a while, you'll find one on a spruce here, but not very often. 99% of the time up northern Maine, a signpost is on a brown ash. When I went to Ontario and hunting, it's full of brown ash out there. They call it black ash there. But that grows like maple does here. And I never once found a brown ash signpost. Now, why would that be?
Because they're everywhere.
It's too common.
Yeah.
Out there, the signposts, if you found a red pine, was real rare out there. I found a red pine signpost, but most of them would be on there's two kinds of willow. The willow that gets a little bit bigger might get 6 inches in diameter. It's got a kind of a softer bark on it, which I think the bark has something to do with it holds their scent.
For sure.
That would be the signpost there. And red cedar is not common, and white oak's not as common. I think that's why they're rubbing in the area for this signpost in particular.
Yeah, that's interesting. When you talk about like the specific trees, like one thing I've noticed go back on the scrape side is like on the mountain here in Pennsylvania, getting into the big woods here, most of the scrapes I find in the woods are under American beech trees.
Yeah. I find them here too under beech trees too, because it's the limb, it's got a good limb.
Yeah, it's really, it's got a lot of touch points for them and hanging low.
Yeah. Here, most of what I call the annual ones, the good scrapes that are there every year up here, they're going to be under a spruce or fir green, conifers. And it'll be under one of those, and every year you'll see they snap some of the limbs off, but it's usually those up here for the annual ones.
Interesting. Yeah, I wonder with that, like even, obviously those evergreens just being, you ever snap a branch off, like it smells piney, like a, aromatic type stuff if they just, I don't know.
I think for sure that's got to have something to do with it. I mean, that's what I always suspected on our places is that the softer trees are easier to tear into. They're more likely to hold scent. That was my suspicion.
Yeah.
Well, I think for these annual scrapes, I think it's because the spruce limb or the fir limb, there's a lot of place to put scent on.
Yeah.
Because that's what they're doing. They're putting the scent with their eyes and stuff. And I think they get up there and they can get scent all over that.
Yep. That would make sense.
Yeah.
I always wonder like how long that retains. Like, I mean, if you've ever shot a buck that, after, or even like right at the, going into the rut, like look how like it's like a grease ball on its head, from its forehead glands into like the preorbitals and stuff. Like I just, it seems like a waxy type coating. Like you think that probably has a pretty long lasting effect on that stuff.
Dude, I bet they can almost see it from a distance. You know what I mean? Like they're so keen to that scent. They can walk, 50 yards downwind of it and just, pick their head up. And
how do you think, like, in your low deer density areas like that, just like you were saying, like that mature buck kind of knows, where every doe is and he's going to go. Do you think he has the same relationship and instinct around any of the bucks in that area? He just knows who they are and where they're at?
Oh, they know each other.
Yeah.
The dominant structure is already figured out, ahead of time. We don't, you can see where bucks fought on the snow. It's plain as day, right? It's written in the snow.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't find it a lot here because, there's fewer bucks than there would be in places, but they already know who's the dominant one. Usually when you find where a couple of bucks had fought and it's knocked down, drag out, that's one buck getting out of his territory and he's horning in on someone else's,
Mm-hmm.
And they may not have met before.
Yeah.
Or they may have just be pissed off enough to start a fight anyway, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But yeah. But it's not a lot. You don't find a lot of buck fights.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Rack Hub.
Well, dude, sheds are starting to hit the ground.
Yeah, and although we usually don't find many of them, we've done pretty well this season so far.
I would say for just, a handful of walks, we've got a pile of sheds to show for it. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, if shed season would end today, I think it was pretty successful.
So this year we're partnering with Rack Hub. It's an antler mounting system for your sheds.
Yeah, and obviously people have watched our podcast. We've got this massive pile of sheds that are on the table at all times, but you guys took the time to set up Wide Boy's shed on the R1, which is a really cool way to now have that thing right off to my left-hand side during the podcast.
So some of these sheds just call for a little bit more appreciation, I guess. So rather than being on a pile on the table, we're going to mount them on the wall, and they look awesome. So
yeah. And so if anybody wants to try Rack Hub, you can use the code HUNTR10, HUNTR10 at rackhub.com to get 10% off your order.
Use Rack Hub to make the most of your shed season.
Does it seem like when you're doing this tracking, you mentioned it with like your grandson, oftentimes like because of the deer density, if you come up or you're tracking that buck and he's with a doe, that there's usually satellite bucks around him?
Well, I used to say no to that unless it's late.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when like our muzzleloader season is the week after rifle, so it's like the first week of December.
Mm-hmm.
And the rut's over, but there's always one or two does somewhere, and that will attract more than one. But most people don't see it because there ain't a lot of people up, muzzleloader hunting,
Yeah.
But yes, but normally, I think that's the satellite stuff is when you have a higher population. But something ironically, like I told you, our deer population, we've had 3 easy winters before this one, and this one it might end up being average. Doesn't look like it's going to be a severe winter. Well, they got through to the middle of February without even having to yard up, and they could walk anywhere and get feed. So
right.
Once they get into February like that, they got it pretty well made. But last fall, I saw with my grandson 2 bucks together. One was like a 2-year-old, and one was one of them monster ones there. And we saw in the same area 3 bucks together with a doe. There was 2 yearling bucks. I think they were crotch horns. And they all started. We bumped into them. We were coming out of a thicket, and we just happened to stumble on. We just came to a big scrape there, and we were going to stop to look at it. Started seeing tails going, and there was 2 young bucks went across this opening, and then the doe. And then when I looked back, there was another great big buck, a real big one. And it stopped down there, and I didn't realize it, but my grandson saw it, and he could just see the face and the top of his neck. And like I said, he doesn't have the experience. He didn't want to shoot, and he didn't shoot that thing. I think he could have killed it because he's a good shot, and then that one went. So there was 3 bucks together with that doe. And I've never seen it till this year,
So maybe that population's getting to that point where you're starting to see that a little bit.
It definitely is, because we had our last real severe winters were 2007, 8, and 9, and we lost half the deer herd here, and they lost in the deer yard above us. They think they lost 85% of the deer. So, and then since then, like in town here, we have to tag our deer, go to a tagging station, and register it.
Mm-hmm.
So they keep accurate count of what's here. So the store in town here tags the deer. And back in the to give a little history on it, back in the 50s and 60s, maybe even the 70s, they used to tag 400 deer, 400 and something a year. And then it started when they did all that cutting back in the 80s and 90s, it started going down into the 200s.
Wow.
And then when we had those bad winters, I think the following year they tagged 75. Part of it was because the hunter participation was way down. Everybody said, "Well, there ain't no deer up north."
Yeah.
It was part of it was that. And then it went up to between 100 and to 125 for a lot of years, right up until would be 4 years ago. And it actually coincided with we killed the majority of the coyotes around the deer yards here in town, and we had some easier winters, and it went from 125 to 250.
Wow.
In 1 year. Part of that was does. They gave out more doe permits, or they started giving doe permits. They might have not had any before that. But I think it was $200. So it went from 125 basically to 200.
Wow.
And then the next year, it dropped to 200, went to 250 overall. Then the tagging dropped to 200 the next year for whatever reason, conditions or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then last year, it jumped from 200 to 350.
Jeez.
Wow.
So you can see that, yes, we're having a population is growing. And our sightings was last fall. We take about 20 people at the lodge, my deer hunts here. And some are guided, some are unguided. I call it American plan. But there's generally about 20 hunters per week. Might be 18, might be 21. So, but every week last year, the last few years has been lots and lots of sightings.
Mm-hmm.
Even the first week when people think, well, it's warmer, there's no snow. I counted a few years ago, I went around, there was so many sightings, I went around and asked everybody how many deer they saw that week. And out of 20 people, it was like 29 bucks and 105 does or something. And that was pretty good. But last year, the first week, I don't know how many they saw. I quit counting that, but they always miss some and all that. But they killed, I think, 5 and they missed 4 the first week. And that's out of 20 people. That's almost 50%.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And then the next week was about the same. They might have killed 5 and missed 4, or killed 4 and missed 5. It was about the same. And then we had some shooters come in for the third week, and they killed 9 and they only missed 1. So they should have had 10 that week. Yeah. So, and then the next week, ironically, we had the most snow Thanksgiving week, and they did the worst. And part of that is because the guys hunting on snow and tracking, they can be a little bit more particular, and they pass up some. And even the other weeks, there was plenty of guys passed up bucks, the young bucks, the 2-year-old bucks, the yearling bucks. They pass up a lot of them. So the herd's grown good, and it'll be a good again this year.
I mean, historically, what is the culture there around killing does? Is that like, I know in a lot of places low deer density, guys who grew up with that are just like, they'll never shoot one.
Well, that's up to the individuals, but the way they do it here now, you apply for a doe permit anyway. So if you don't want one, you just don't apply for one.
Got it.
And then they've also just made it. They started 2 years ago. We used to be allowed one deer with a rifle or muzzle or whatever. It was one deer, and so if you shot a doe, you couldn't shoot a buck. So a lot of people kind of waited till the end, and then even if they drew a doe permit, they'd wait. But then they made it so if you got a doe permit, you could shoot a doe and a buck. So that's changed it a little bit. I think a few more people, and they realize there's lots of does around now. It isn't like I say the low deer densities. It isn't like it would be probably in your area, but we have a lot of deer. I mean, it's pretty hard to hunt a day and not see deer,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, some people, they don't care. They'll shoot a doe and it's meat, and they'll try to shoot a good buck or just try to shoot a buck or whatever.
Yeah. What like antler class of buck can you expect to run into up there? I mean, what are you looking for?
I don't look for antlers. I mean, I make sure they got antlers. I'm looking for just an old deer.
Well,
and I've shot a bunch of them that don't have a lot for antlers.
Yeah. Well, so did you say you're looking for an either or buck though? You're passing on the.
Well, if it's an either or, what I mean by when I call an either or, I'm just looking to see. I would shoot a lighter buck if it had a really good rack.
Well, yeah,
but
that's what I mean.
won't shoot a lighter buck with a poor rack. But I'd shoot I've shot many bucks over 200, way over 200 with 100 inches of antler.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't care about that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and I guess what I'm asking is what's possible? I mean, do you have 180-inch deer up there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Years ago, there's a picture of it in my book, my first book I wrote. It's the one I wrote. I've written 3 books, actually 4, because I wrote Hunting Big Woods Bucks and then volume 2. Mm-hmm. And then I combined them. And so the book, if you looked on the website and looked up the book, Hunting Big Woods Bucks, then it would be my 2 first books combined.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And there's a picture in that one of a guy from down in Pennsylvania. He was from Pennsylvania, come up with his father. First year up, young fella, and he shot one the first day out. I put him on one of them signposts was a signpost area in one of them annual scrapes.
Mm-hmm.
And I set him up there because he said he could sit all week. I said, I need someone who'll sit all week. I think you'll shoot a buck here. He said, yeah, I'll do that. 11 o'clock the first morning, he shoots this buck that grosses 184.
Wow.
And it dressed 245.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, they're here. I haven't shot any real high scoring. I mean, my clients have shot way more better antlered bucks than I have. Our antler club is a 140. If you shoot a 140 here, you got a really nice buck up in this country.
Yeah.
That's a nice buck anywhere.
Sure.
Absolutely.
The point is here, you don't get to look at antlers anyways.
It's so fast.
You see a couple of tines going through the brush, and, if you're on the track and you see a big deer,
yeah,
the deer you're on, I always know by the track whether I'm going to shoot or not,
Mm-hmm.
And then what he's got for antlers is what he's got.
Is what he's got.
So Hal, I've always wondered, watching you guys do the tracking and stuff, that I don't know if I've ever seen any of you guys with a scope on your rifle.
Yeah, some guys hunt with a scope. Just a pain in the butt, because if you've got a clear day and there's no snow in the trees, well, you're okay with that.
Yeah.
But they're harder to carry, you know.
Yeah.
But if there's snow on the hanging in the tree, especially wet snow, and it's dumping on you, you can't keep a scope cleared out.
No, it's gonna
You
fog
could say,
up.
"Well, I'll put scope covers on." Yeah, that's great. Buck jumps up in front of you. What are you going to do with your scope covers on, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just impractical. But some guys do it, and they're successful hunting that way. But I still don't. I know some of the guys when they get older, they say, I can't see the peep sight anymore, so I got to use a scope. Everybody's eyes are different, but I don't have any problem. I just take the aperture out. Actually, our Skinner's making ours for us, a Big Woods Tracker Skinner Peep, and I had them drill out the threads so there's no aperture, and they drill the threads out. I think it's 20,000. It's like a ghost ring.
Yeah.
In the way you shoot a peep, you don't even look. Everybody thinks you got to have it centered. You don't center nothing. All I see is my bead. I paint it orange. I see my bead, and wherever that bead is, that's where the bullet's going to hit.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, like I shot a Marlin 30-30 forever growing up, but like my dad always made sure that basically I had lifted rings so that I could drop down. So if we were still hunting and I put one through the brush or whatever, I wasn't trying to find them in the scope, right? I would drop down and have my sights right there to go through for my iron sights.
Yeah, I know some guys use that, but it's awkward. You're either got to press your head down or you got to lift your head up to look through the scope.
Yep.
Yeah. There's nothing natural about that.
Yep. Yeah. No, it makes sense. I always wondered because the snow thing makes a ton of sense, right? I mean, you know, that there's nothing worse than pulling up a scope and just being fogged up and moisture and everything else.
Well, you got to put it in perspective. Most people are going to be lucky to get a chance at a big buck up here.
Yeah.
And why don't you keep all the odds in your favor? Why would you do things that take some of your odds away? Everything you do like that, if you're cutting your odds down 10% for everything you do like that, why would you do that? You want to have 100% chance of getting them, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Are most of your shots, like how far are these deer generally when you see them or when you shoot them?
Oh, I don't know. Probably the average is 30, 40 yards, maybe 50, you know.
Yeah.
I've shot, I don't know what the closest one. I've shot a couple at 19 paces or something. I shot one in his bed at 19. The furthest one that I've ever shot was that I paced it off was 120 paces. It was in the hardwoods.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's furthest I've ever shot.
I definitely have seen you shoot one pretty close in like super heavy snow to where you you probably were about to step on the damn thing before he got up and out of there.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's levels a playing field, especially when you get some wind and you got snow. And,
yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the trick? Like, you know, once you get on a track and you're like, okay, this is the track that I want. What's the pace like, I guess? We're still hunting at that point? It's like he could be anywhere, or it's like, hey, we're going to cover ground here and try to catch up to him.
If you're still hunting on a track, you're Elmer Fudding. Right? See Elmer Fudd go along carrying his gun. I'm going to get the wascally whitetail, you know?
Yeah.
Usually when you pick up a track, it's old. I mean, the odds of you picking up a track and he's just left it is pretty slim.
Yeah.
And typically, if you pick one up, it was probably made in the night.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know if he's a half a mile from you or 5 miles from you. So you got to just go. When I get on a track, I don't care if I'm snapping sticks or making noise. My whole goal is to catch up to the buck. And then I got the rest of the day to hunt for him. If you don't do that, you'll probably never catch up to them anyway, so you won't be hunting for that deer. You might see another deer along the way, but if you don't move until you catch up, and then there's ways, he might get tangled up with a doe and you slow down and figure that out or whatever. And then early in the season, when they're in their normal pattern, they're eventually they don't travel as far and they're going to feed and then lay down. And when you see that, then you can slow down or something. But other than that, you got to go until you catch up. I don't care if I jump them or not. You're not going to, it's not that easy to shoot one laying in his bed looking back at you.
Yep.
That ain't the way most people get them.
Mm-hmm.
I've shot quite a few that way, but I've shot most of mine the next time after I jump them. Once I jump them, that's it. Now I've caught up. Now I can hunt for the deer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
a lot of times I'll get them the next time. I wait a half an hour and get after them, and I usually get them the next time.
Oh, interesting.
So almost like a bump and dump, I guess.
All right. Well, so then do you have in your mind an idea of how far he's likely to go after the first time you bump him?
Up here, they usually go somewhere between 100 and 500 yards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a huge piece of information. Because most guys, I mean, if you just said, hey, go track a buck, and having never done it before, I would have gone and I'd be probably
Elmer Fuddin
the whole time.
Most people do. I can't believe you guys ain't got my book yet, so you'd know all this stuff.
I haven't read many books.
I thought you'd do an interview. You'd read the book and you'd have questions.
No, we just have conversations. That's the whole point, is just to have the conversation, right? Well, no, I mean, I think that was it. So I would assume when you catch up to that buck, or even when you're tracking, do you worry about the wind at all?
Not till I catch up.
Not till you catch up to him.
Yeah, if I think he's laying down there somewhere, I'll check the wind and figure out what I got to do then. But you can't hunt worrying about the wind up here, because you can stand in one place and it blows 4 directions in 5 minutes,
Yeah.
And you're moving, the wind isn't going to affect you. The wind only affects you really if you're sitting somewhere and it's radiating out from you.
Mm-hmm.
When you're moving, that's not getting anywhere.
And I assume he is, like, when you're tracking, that buck is doing something with the wind, right? Trying to keep it in his face?
No.
He's just wandering. He's just going.
He's going where he wants. He's got it somewhere he wants to go, and he's going to just go there. Quite often, they'll actually put the wind in their back, and they can smell how far behind you they are. You'll see them walking along, and then all of a sudden, they'll take a few jumps and pick up the pace. You got a little too close for comfort, so they picked up the pace.
That's crazy.
But eventually, the wind is going to either wind's changing or they're going to change direction, and it'll straighten it out. But you can't do nothing about it. You just got to keep going along,
I wonder if it's just like the pressure orientation of it. I mean, like where we're at, there's guys everywhere hunting. Every farm is hunted. Every corner of every farm is hunted, and there's people. And like obviously they've got coyotes and things like that they're worried about. But from a human presence, like, I assume how they just don't come across people that often, at least in a pressured setting.
They don't. They might see them in the winter, but that's why I said it's like hunting a different animal.
Yeah.
Everybody that comes up here, what I find when people come up north to hunt up here, they're either going to love it or they're going to hate it. There don't seem to be any in between. And there's many reasons either way for loving it or hating it, but you have to get it. If you come up here and you try to hunt like you do down your way with that mindset of, the deer are going to bed here and I got to look forget it. You ain't going to be successful up here hunting that way. You got to learn over again and learn. You got to learn how to hunt these deer.
Well, I could see why people would love it. I mean, we've talked about it before. There's a sense of freedom in the way that you hunt, right? The way that you're able to just kind of just go and get after them, right? Whereas transparently for most people, like I feel like we tiptoe around everything. Like everything we do is overanalyzed, and we're tiptoeing around it, and we're trying to think 2 steps ahead. And it's like you just get after it. You just go. Yeah,
you never know. When you get on a track in the morning, you don't know what's going to happen for that day. you're when you're following that buck, you're living his life, right? He's writing his life in the snow for you.
Wow.
Takes you everywhere he's been, shows you everything he's done.
Well, what's your, I mean, obviously you've had seasons where you've had to pivot that strategy and you've got bare ground. Like what do you do at that point?
I just still hunt.
Just still hunt then.
Poke around, just try to keep myself in those areas where the bucks are. And yeah, well, this year we had a little snow up high a couple of times early where we could track for a day here or there up high, just way up in the mountains. But we saw, like I said, with my grandson, we saw all them deer. It was on bare ground, just still hunting around.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are any of your clients bow hunting?
No. Well, I don't guide hunters anymore myself. I've got some guides that work for me in November, but
yep.
I quit guiding deer hunters when I turned 65.
Yep.
I decided I was just going to take my grandson and have fun with him, and that's what I've been doing. I got to teach him what I know so he can pass it on.
Yeah, absolutely. So
he wants to be a guide.
None of those guides are guiding bow hunters then? It's all gun hunts?
No, not up here. I mean, like I said, I did in the past. Once in a while, somebody'd call and say, I'd like to bow hunt or whatever. And yeah, all right, I'll get a place ready for you. But yeah, no, we do the rifle season 4 weeks. And I mean, that's what I do. I do that, and I have the guides. I've got a bunch of guides, and they tell me what weeks they want me to book them. Some of them only guide 1 week. I got one guide that'll guide all 4 weeks, and I just book those guided hunts and book the rest in the lodging with I call it American plan. It's meals and lodging, and we'll show you places to go.
Yeah, which I think a lot of guys probably like that style for sure.
Yeah, it's fun, and they're successful. I mean, nowadays. I just tell them to download the Onyx. It's so easy for me to give people a pin. You know what I mean? I can put a pin right on their phone, and then and I know there's deer there, and I might even give them a pin where there's a nice signpost and get them started, and they do pretty well at that. They like it, and yeah. So, if anybody's listening and is interested in coming out and hunting with us, just get a hold of me.
And how you said you take about 20 guys? Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's about what it works out with what I have available for lodging. That's about what I take.
Mm-hmm.
So per week, and more than half of it's repeat. The same guys come back.
I bet.
I don't book out like years ahead. When the guys leave, they either tell me they have till December to tell me what they want. They might change a week. They might have been guided and they want to go American plan. And I get all that put in, and then I take on new people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've got through that process, and I've got a few, the guided hunts are booked. I've got a few American plans. I might have one each week or something, but Thanksgiving week always books up the last because a lot of people just can't get away from the family for Thanksgiving. So, but I've got plenty of room right now for Thanksgiving week. So anybody's interested in coming up, and that's a week, obviously, there's a better chance with the good snow and stuff. And it's right in the peak of the rut. It's a fun week.
Yeah. Now that you're semi-retired, how do you get to do any interest in like big game hunts? Like I know you said you got some moose up there, and you ever head up into Canada for any of that?
I went to Alaska moose hunting. I took one of my cameramen. He had never shot a moose, so I basically tried to help him get one, and we saw 5 bulls. One legal one, and I wasn't with him, and he kind of muffed it a little bit and didn't get him. But I've been elk hunting and on Colorado 6 times. I've shot six 6x6s. in Colorado, and but I don't go out, venture out too much, other than that, I like my deer hunt. I still guide moose hunters, so that's my, or I take a few bear hunters in my remote camp. I take 2 small groups, and then I do a couple of weeks of moose seasons, and then get ready for deer and do that.
How's the moose population now?
Oh, lots of moose.
Yeah.
We had to die off on them too, that they got overpopulated, and like anything, Mother Nature took over with the ticks, the winter tick, and
yep.
But it's good now. It's a lot of good bulls again, and plenty of moose. I mean, the success rate on moose in Maine is still, it's like 67%. Where you're going to go anywhere and hunt, and that's guided and unguided. The guided hunts are pretty much, well, not for everybody, I guess, but it's pretty much 100% opportunity on that. Are those good bulls, good quality bulls?
Are those tags tough to get for non-residents for moose?
Yes, they are. It's they give 10% of the permits to non-residents, but your odds are less than a resident because it's a lot of people apply. I think they said the odds are like 1 in 75, but I guess that's not in the scope of things for some drawings. It's not extremely bad, but
yeah.
Scott drew one and killed one a couple years ago. A really nice bull up there. Scott Wow from up on the mountain.
Oh yeah. Nice.
Yeah, killed a really nice bull.
Somebody gets them, and then they started an outfitter tag program about 4 years ago, and I don't own my lodge anymore, so I don't qualify for one, but I have a friend that's got a lodge just above me, and he's got one every year. Matter of fact, that drawing comes first. The outfitter tags are drawn first. I think there was 80 of them this year, and I'm going to be guiding on his again this year, and it isn't sold yet. So anybody listening is interested in that, they can email me,
and they can purchase that tag basically directly.
The tag's all bought. The outfitter gets the tag, puts the name of the hunter on it, and then packages it up with a hunt. Is all one price, and they're big money. They're in a cheap one is 20 grand, and the highest one's at 30. They're in that range. So, anybody's got that. It's a really, it's a world-class hunt.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's once in a lifetime type hunt.
Yeah, and it's world-class. We have really nice trophy bulls here. And
is that a September hunt, Hal?
Yeah, I have him put in for that. It's zone 4, which is the zone just above me. It's in that North Maine woods we talked about. It's going to be a tent camp hunt. I've got an area up there. I hunt out of a tent camp, and it's good area. The guy I took last year was actually he was a Marine too. He put in, we raffled it. We did it through Operation Reboot. It's a veterans organization in Maine, and the guy that bought it, the guy that won it's actually a Marine, is a Marine, and he bought 2 tickets and he won it, and he shot a nice bull the first morning at 10 o'clock or something.
Wow.
Big old bull. Yeah, big one.
That's awesome. Well, a lot of opportunities up there. It's I mean, we've talked to a few people who have hunted like the White Mountains in New Hampshire and stuff, and obviously Adirondacks in New York. We've got a lot of buddies that are New York guys and stuff, but that main conversation has always been pretty mysterious and foreign to us.
Well, we know, I don't know if you know any of these guys, but Brett Joy, we just had on the podcast not long ago. He's from New Hampshire.
Yeah, he's in New Hampshire.
Do you know Brett?
I've met him, I'm sure, at one of the events we have in New England here.
Yeah, maybe that hunt stock or something.
I see him on the Facebook name go by sometimes. Yes.
Yeah, I think
I have trouble keeping everybody in line.
I think they did that hunt stock.
Yeah, do you go to that?
Yeah, we do that.
The trap.
We do that every year. Yeah.
We thought about coming, but that one's a poke for us. I think they're going to do another one in New York this year.
Mm-hmm.
We thought about going to that.
Yeah, we'll be at both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, those are pretty good. They're captive for deer hunters. Yeah.
Yeah.
He puts on a good show with that, and it's quite an event. It's fun.
Well, it seems
Cool.
like everybody from, we classify ourselves, but from Pennsylvania up to where you're at, like a lot of times we get left out of the conversation, right? It's just you hear about the Midwest or, go down to Texas and stuff. And like that tends to be, all the conversation around deer. And like, from Pennsylvania to Maine, you've got a pretty serious group of deer hunters. We just got it in a different way.
Yeah, and there's another group in the Midwest, the northern Midwest, between the UP,
Yep,
Wisconsin, and Minnesota. That's a big. We have a big following there because they get the snow too, and they have shorter seasons. But I think that's a big draw for people coming to Maine, or even New Hampshire's got a long season too. Maine and New Hampshire both have, like 4-week rifle seasons.
Yeah, that's really long for the big deer states, at least. Most of us are 7 to 10 days at the most.
Yeah. So I think that's a big draw for people is they have more time or more days to choose from.
What state is Troy from?
Idaho.
You ever talked to Troy Pottinger? You know who that is?
No.
He's an Idaho whitetail hunter. He's, I think, mainly a bow hunter, but he's hunting, what I would call exclusively
the Rocky Mountains,
big woods too.
Yeah.
There is some big woods. I've hunted. A few times. I hunted out in northwest Montana.
Oh,
and
yeah.
That's just like hunting here, except the mountains are bigger. The deer are smaller.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing I don't get excited about going out.
Yeah.
The Montana deer are about the same size as the Adirondacks. You get 150, 60 pound buck. You got a pretty good one, and on average, that's what they are. So, but you can get some big racked ones out there. So when you go there, you're kind of hunting for a rack more than you are for a weight, because you ain't going to shoot one over 200,
Yeah. HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Pure Wildlife Blends.
Yeah, buddy. We're doing a lot of food plots this year. It seems like the planning, the preparation, like the coordinating for getting everything, in the ground, it's like it just never ends.
Yeah, and I just got off an 18-hour bender where I'm on multiple farms getting everything ready. But this year, fortunately, we've got Pure Wildlife Blends, which is Jeff Sturgis. Who better to partner with for our food plot program than a guy who's got 30 years of experience, been on thousands of farms. The guy lives and breathes food plots.
Yeah, and so the blends themselves are all handpicked by Jeff, and it's like, man, we've had a lot of conversations with him over the years, and he's been pretty influential in how we set up farms and stuff. And frankly, the product, it's in a name, it's Pure Wildlife Blend. So a lot of these other seeds that you see that are blue and orange and all these things, it's because they're coated with lime and they're dyed, and it's marketing at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. So we have a lot of confidence in the seeds that Jeff has chose, and that's what we're going to be planting this year. And so right now, you can use code HUNTR10 for 10% off anything on the website.
So if you're looking for switch, clover, brassica, or Jeff's favorite, layer in the rye.
Layer in the rye.
Yep. Check out purewildlifeblends.com.
Hal, did you say you're sitting in your trophy room there?
His man cave.
No, I'm sitting in my man cave, yeah.
Man cave. You got some mounts down there?
No, they're all upstairs in the
all right.
my living room.
No worries. I was going to ask you to spin us around.
I was gonna.
That's all right.
No, it's kind of, we have a walk-in basement here, so we can pull in and come into the basement and kick our shoes off. The wood stove is here, and I got my decorations, my man decorations in here and stuff, and
cool.
And I got a couple of a few Europeans. I got one. I should have it mounted. The one I'll tip it up to like behind me.
Sure.
That buck there is the first buck I ever shot tracking.
Wow.
A 10-pointer. I think he weighed 190 or something.
Dang.
It was my first one. I shot that one in 1987.
Wow.
Before you guys' time.
Before I was born.
I was born. I was 3.
Before you were born.
I was 3 years old at that point.
Dang. Yeah, you are old, huh?
Yeah.
And then those pictures, that's my grandson with his moves stuff. But over here, can you see some racks?
Yep, I see them. Are those sheds?
Yeah.
I was about to ask you, because I hunt some low deer density areas, and sometimes there's not much more defeating than to walk, 20 miles in a day and not find a shed. I was going to see if you found sheds when you were out.
Well, I do once in a while. I've found them over the years. Deer hunt, usually they're chewed up or something. I've never found. I found two one time in the same area years ago. It's where that guy I told you about shot the one that scored 184. Yep. I found two sheds. We'd never hunted there before, and I was going over there in the winter. I used to go over there and coyote hunt. It was by the lake, and I had a coyote bait over there, and there was always buck tracks around the shore in the winter. They lived in there,
mm-hmm.
And I followed a buck track in, and I found a shed there in the winter. It was a half of a 10, pretty nice one. And then I went in the fall and scouted it out, me and my other guide, and we built some ground blinds. It was a low area by the lake, cedar bogs and dark growth. And it was, for 1 year, it was full of deer. And then they logged in the deer. It was like they killed off all the deer.
Wow.
It was weird. But that was the year he shot that one that was 184. And walking around in there, I found 50 the day after he shot that buck. I was back in there, and I found a shed from that buck 50 yards from where he killed it.
Wow.
Now that was a coincidence, but it was his area, and down in there, that buck obviously was probably in that area year round. I mean, and he went out of that area too. Mm-hmm. But and then I found another shed in there the same week. I found two more sheds in there. One of them was a 10. It was laying like this, and the squirrels had chewed underneath it. It was a half of a 10, and that would have scored 170.
Oof.
And then I found another one that was half of a 12. It was a 6 on one side, and the coyote had chewed it down, the beam down to the last point, and part of that, and most of that point off. So I really couldn't score it. But that didn't have as long a tines, but I'm sure it was that would have been at least over 150 inches or something.
So that area was the place, and then they cut and changed it all.
To this day, it hasn't come back. I went over in there a couple of years ago and looked around. There's a few deer in there, but it was a lot of deer then. And some places don't come back after that, but other places come back. Some places are better than they were before. Got to keep moving around. The logging changes things, and
it's a big curveball on it.
Yeah.
Well, Hal, we appreciate you spending some time with us this evening. It's been good to catch up, and like I said, Jared and I've talked about it a long time, and that main big wood side is always been fascinating for sure, just because it is, and obviously even here learning, it's so much different than any of the whitetail hunting that we've ever done or talked about.
Yeah, it's totally different, and that's why I say I've learned over the years. I've been outfitting up here for 30-something years, and it's people either love it or they hate it, and that's it. But I think the majority love it once they come here.
Yeah,
it's an experience for them. They may not come every year, but I've had guys that they come, and then a few years later they say, I'm going to come back again or something. And then other guys come every year religiously. They just love it that much, and that's their week, and they come. And so,
well, and you guys I've seen the podcast stuff you've been putting out here. You guys have done, are you going to keep putting out hunts? There's like a group of you guys that are kind of contributing to the hunt side of it on YouTube and stuff, right?
Yeah, well, that's kind of, I started this myself, going back a little at that history you asked me, when I wrote my first book, and it sold like crazy. I don't know. I didn't have any expectation of it, but the publisher printed 10,000 copies and they were gone in like 3 months.
Wow.
And I sold some out of my house and he sold some, and we reprinted them, and then he did it, sold the rights in paperback, which I got screwed out of. I didn't get nothing out of that. And then I wrote another one, and I think it didn't sell as well. Everybody thought it was the same thing rehashed, but it wasn't. All the stories were different. And then I wrote another. Then we started. Well, to back up a little bit more, so the guides that worked for me at the time, when I started doing, I started getting asked to do seminars at trade shows and functions, and I could tell the people were looking at me because I was 20 years younger then, right? I was in my mid 40s, and they're looking. I could tell they're looking at me and they're going, that tall drink of water can do that, but I don't think I ever could. So I said, well, we ought to just have the guys, my guys. I said, we might as well have them, make a team out of it, and then then there'll be somebody that would relate to everybody. I mean, everybody would relate to somebody on the team.
Yep.
That's kind of how that concept. And over the years, we've gone through a bunch of people. People move away, something comes up in their life, and quite frankly, it was a long road with this business. It was, me and Chris never made any money. We did it because we liked to do it, and we were trying different things, and of course the technology's changed in 20 years, right?
Oh yeah.
YouTube wasn't around back then. The internet was barely anything back then,
Yep.
And so we had to kind of move along with the times, and yeah. So we kind of have a team concept, and then this year we had an initiative to go kind of take it to the next level, kind of get everything, our YouTube presence got big. We got the silver thing for over 100,000, and so we wanted to up our podcast too. So we've refreshed that. Everything's like an initiative for this year, and we're going to focus on content, because really that's what the business is. It's
content.
It's educating through entertainment the deer hunters. So they're getting their education and entertainment from us, and that's what it's about. And so yeah, we've got, I don't know, we've scaled it back. So this year we put some requirements on it, and some of the guys weren't willing to do the work, so they moved on, and the ones that wanted to keep rolling with us, then they're there. But it still revolves around me and my teaching, and the guys have learned a lot from me and carry it on, and to me the idea was just to pass this information on to the next generation, because if as deer hunters or hunters in general, if we don't pass our knowledge on, it dies with us, right?
Oh yeah.
And some people are fine with that. I know there's a lot of people that are going to take it to the grave with them. They don't want to help anybody,
Yeah.
That's them, and that's fine. And then when we started, as we started going along, people wanted different things, and well, what do you wear? And they kind of gravitated to I never thought of it that way, but a couple different people probably 10 years ago said, really what you have is a system. And I go, what do you mean? They said, everything you're teaching a system how to be successful hunting in the big woods. And I guess I said, yeah, you're probably right. So now we have our own wool clothing line, and we've got, we put out a deer call, and we've done different things, and it's things to help people in this pursuit of this type of hunting. So right down from head to toe, the clothing and the system, and learning to navigate in the woods and map and compass, and it's all part of the system.
Yeah.
So if you want to be successful, follow the system. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, right?
Well, yeah, the content's been really cool to see the different guys doing hunts, and then yeah, I noticed that here in the last few podcasts that you guys have put out that, yeah, you've really taken that up a notch from a production level.
Yeah, we had to. Everything changes. Our podcast equipment we started 6 years ago. It's the same equipment.
Yep.
So we had to kind of upgrade, and we had some help with a guy that really, he's got another guy that's got a podcast in Maine. He offered to help us, and so he knew about lighting and cameras on each person and all of that. And yeah, so it's you got to keep up with the times, and I'm all for it. I can't push the buttons and do any of the stuff, but I can flap my gums and
that's
go out
it.
and hunt the woods anyway.
Just put you in front of it.
I guess, but
just put you in front.
I've been doing some more stuff too, and I'm going to have a whole series coming out on. I think it's called. I don't know. I think the working title was the master class. I think they're going to call it. It's just going to be films. Short films are teaching on a certain subject.
Yeah.
I'll be doing those. We already filmed 4 of those. And I'm also going to tell all my deer stories on film.
Oh, that would be cool.
Like a fireside chat, just sit down and do a story, and it might be a half an hour, it might be an hour, whatever it is, and do that on film and put those out in a playlist or whatever you call it, or something, I don't know, but I'm going to get that done this year. So we're going to up the content quite a bit this year.
Well, it'll be good. I mean, is best place for our listeners just to keep going to the YouTube primarily?
Well, they can get the podcast on, any of the, like you get it on iTunes and Spotify and all that.
Yep.
They just want to listen. A lot of people, that's what they do. They listen to it when they're driving down the road and something. So you can get it that way, YouTube, and then our YouTube channel. It's all, you just Google up Big Woods Bucks, you're going to get it all. And then the website with a store where you can get stuff is on bigwoodsbucks.com. It's pretty easy. And then my outfit and stuff is Big Woods Outfitters, but there's a page on the Big Woods Bucks website there's a tab that says Outfitters,
So if anybody wants to get a hold of you for a hunt, that's the best way to get to you?
Yeah, just email me. It's the best way.
Okay.
I mean, they can call, but I always got to get their email in the end.
Yep. Cool. Perfect, buddy. Well, we appreciate the time and thanks for spending some precious hours with us and our listeners. I'm sure they're really going to enjoy it. And we really enjoy watching everything that you guys are doing. So look forward to seeing more of it this year, especially with the new content you're going to be putting out.
Yeah. We're looking forward to moving ahead, and it won't be long. We'll be back in the woods again hunting. Well, I'll be back pretty quick because I'm doing my deer clinic starting in May. So
there you go.
That gives me 5 weekends in the woods, 5 3-day weekends right off here.
Nice.
Yeah, well, that'll be good. Yeah, we're just doing some shed hunting at this point, and then we'll see where she goes.
Yeah.
So
we won't be doing any shed hunting for a while up in this country.
yeah, maybe May as well.
Yeah.
So, all right, Hal, well, we'll let you go. We appreciate you coming on, and thanks again.
All right, good talking with you guys.
Big Woods Bucks.
Well, we've been talking. I've watched Hal stuff for a long time here, and that main Big Woods style has always been like mysterious because anytime you've got wilderness, remote whitetails, the potential for age is there, which means I assume there's not a lot of them, but I assume there's some giants just like roaming in there. In fact, I remember seeing like old timey photos from I don't know, it was probably the 40s or 50s of like guys with like just giant mane bucks on their like mammoths.
Yeah, I've seen some too.
And so yeah, it's just intriguing.
That's what he said. That guy shot 184. I mean, that's not a small deer.
No, it's a giant.
So they're field dressing like 260.
That's a monster. It's a 300-pound deer.
Yeah.
I'd like to believe, and maybe we're just completely naive, that like you could kill a big one with a bow.
Oh yeah.
In those areas.
Oh yeah.
It'd be tough for sure, but it'd be cool as shit. And I'm sure like you could find like a
You could definitely do it. Yeah, yeah.
Mega in there.
Yeah, I mean it's gonna take a while, and there's gonna be way fewer. I mean, it's not like if you want to kill a 180, it's not the place to go.
No.
But they are there.
But if you want to kill a giant Maine buck that probably looks awesome and is like an adventure type thing, like would be cool.
Well, it's interesting because like you'd have to do it totally different than Hal is doing it. You know, what I mean, he obviously set some guys up on sign basically.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you could go and
you just gotta set it out.
They're still deer. I mean, they're still gonna do deer stuff. I am in agreement with what he's saying because that's what we see in big woods too. Is they're just traveling bigger loops and less distinct core areas and stuff. So
yeah, it makes me wonder like on some of the like even my Kentucky place. Not that it's nearly as remote as that, but it's like how
I'm sure there's more of that down where you're at.
How far are those deer actually wandering? Because again, like from a definitive bedding and food is different because I have ag. Like that's some of it. Like the other Daniel Boone stuff I don't. But yeah, I mean, just like how far are they? Are they covering? Miles? Probably.
Yeah,
probably.
I bet they are.
And it's amazing that those deer like
it's that big contiguous. I mean, big woods.
It's all the same.
Yeah. Well, it's the same, and they just. I don't know what it is in them. They just go.
Well, I mean, think about it. Like, we could walk a mile in 15 minutes or less.
Oh yeah.
So it's like they walk a mile. Like, what else they got to do? They're just gonna eat.
Right. It's not a time thing. It's just cover and security and.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously in the wintertime they're not because they're not burning energy. But like during the fall and stuff, they're in the best condition of their life. They're
and Hal didn't seem to give a lot of like credence to why. You know what I mean? That they do that.
Why they like that?
Why they're going where they're going, doing what they, I mean, I was just wander. But I gotta believe that there's a purpose.
Yep.
Yeah,
I mean, whether we'll ever as humans, decode it, I don't know. But there's a purpose of they're doing something for a reason.
Yeah.
Because I feel like deer, especially there, aren't burning calories for no reason. Like they're probably pretty precious.
Yeah. Yeah, they got something on the brain.
I know what it is. In November, at least.
Old doe tang.
Where's Debbie at? Where you at? Where you at, girl? So, anyways, cool to get Hal Blood nailed down, and also what beast, dude's over 65 or at least 65. Hunting 10 miles a day.
Yeah, he's got them walking boots.
Attaboy. That's a cool thing. I mean, that's it's a damn near mountain man right there.
Yeah, that's the closest they get down here.
Yeah, loving it. So, anyways, we appreciate Hal coming on and talking with us. We appreciate you guys listening to episode 241 with Hal Blood from Bigwood Bucks, and we will catch y'all next time.
Later.
Take me